Have you ever thought about making your own podcast? It seems like that's the in thing right now. Well, do I have the people for you? Anchor is a one-stop shop for recording, hosting, and distributing your podcast. Best of all, it's 100% free and extremely easy to use. And now, Anchor will match with great sponsors who want to advertise on your podcast. That means you can get paid for podcasting right away. To get started, go to anchor.fm/start. Once again, that's anchor.fm/start. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Jay Stevens Podcast, part of the Off the Ball Network. This is episode 204, dedicated to a man who won June 17th, 2010, won his fifth and final NBA championship, Mr. Colby Bryant. And as always, thank you for listening and downloading another episode of the podcast. On today's episode, we are joined by Mr. Coach John Mosley, the head basketball coach at East LA College, which was also featured on Last Chance U Basketball, as him and I have a fun time diving into what makes him the man and the coach that he is, and a whole lot more. This was a lot of fun, and I am also thankful that Coach John Mosley had some time to allow myself and other podcast hosts to really sit down with him, this one via Zoom, and learn more about what makes him the man that he is. We got to learn a lot from the documentary about not just the basketball team, but Coach Mosley as well, and his family and his makeup, and just get a little bit of his background. But he goes a little bit in depth here, get to learn about him, how he views certain players, what he remembers about certain players on the team that he coached from that special season. And this was enjoyable. I have never in my life interviewed a coach, ever. This is the first one. And so I was curious. I want to get deeper. I want to learn more about you, learn more about what makes you the individual that you are, and what makes you so special to the players that you coach. I believe from the interview you're about to hear, you're going to hear and learn just that. Don't open once again today. Looking for that to come back in the very near future. We don't want to get these episodes to go crazy, crazy long. And with that in mind, let's go ahead and take a trip to Los Angeles, California, specifically East LA College, to enjoy my fun conversation with Coach John Mosley, head basketball coach at East LA College, featured on Last Chance U Basketball. And joining us now here on the Jay Stevens Podcast, it is Coach Mosley, the head coach at East LA Community College. He was featured on Last Chance U Basketball, the Netflix documentary that so many of us have loved and grown to enjoy watching ever since that documentary was started. Coach Mosley, how you doing today?
Doing well, man. Doing okay. Still got time. We still kind of rolling out through this pandemic, so still got some time to kind of visit with those who kind of were into the show. So, once that season starts, man, you won't be able to catch me. So you got me.
Absolutely. So did you guys end up having a season? I know it was canceled when I watched the show, but did you guys have a season at all in the spring or winter for anything?
No, I didn't have anything, man. And really just got in the gym. So it's been a slight bit of frustration. We just got in the gym literally like 2 weeks ago, and the LA County being the toughest in regards to getting back. So we crawling back into existence right now. But hey, you know what? We had some time off, and it gave me time to be with the family. So God has a purpose for everything, man. And so great family time. A little frustrating because really wanted to all those young men. So like the next Joe Hampton was like out there with nothing to do, the next shot. They were out there and they needed guidance. But for the most part, they were preserved and they're doing okay. And we can hopefully roll into this summer and kind of get started for 21-22 season.
That's a good deal. Coach, I'm curious, You're a coach, you're a basketball coach, been a long time coach at different spots, a recruiting coordinator at one spot. But when did you know you wanted to be a basketball coach?
Well, you know what? I got my head was all over the place, man. I'm from California. So not only California, I'm from LA, right? So you got all these thoughts in your head. You want to, everybody from LA wants to be a star, right? We want to be, all that. But I think I traveled and played a little bit. I did the missions trip over to Brazil, and then I played in Australia, came back, and my head coach, I was going to go back to play. Like, it's this little C level. It wasn't like the top division in Australia. It was a smaller level. But I was going to go back. My friend was over there playing in the top level. And my coach from college, he says, hey, because I have one class to finish. He said, dude, you got to finish your degree. You got one class to finish. Come on, I'll pay for it. Just sit on the bench and help me. And so I saw the game from the other side, the coaching game from the other side. And I was like, man, this dude is normal. When they're your coach, you kind of look at them kind of like, I don't know, I guess how we look at the authority, like the police, or how we look at officials. We kind of always turn our nose down. I mean, I loved them, but I kind of looked down on them and was like, oh, no, man, I don't want to be on, that's the dark side, But then you actually see from, you kind of see psychologically some of all of the maneuvers and all of the things that he was trying to accomplish, all the techniques that he's trying to accomplish throughout coaching us. And I started to have a greater level of respect, man. And I started to appreciate it. And I said, man, I see the game that he was playing. And then after practice, we're talking about the team and he's talking normal. And I'm seeing some of the strategies that he used to do. And I was like, wow, that makes sense why he did that. Okay, it felt like he punished us this time, but I know why he did it now. Or why didn't he yell us at this time or that time? Or some of the things we were doing on the court, it didn't make sense to me. And sometimes as a leader, as a coach, you can't explain everything. You just got to say, hey, just do it, right? And so I didn't get it. But then from a coaching perspective, when it was explained while we're doing it and while we're going through it, we're preparing, we're planning, we're trying to put pieces together. Here's why this player will play and why this one won't. Sometimes the biggest thing with a player, right? The kids are like, hey, I'm better than him. How come I'm not playing, right? Or to develop a team and put the team together, man, there's all these different strategies and there's all these the way it fits is and the way what a coach has to think about holistically. It was just amazing to see. And then I kind of, I was kind of volunteering, getting my class paid for. And then I got into, let me go find some players. This is my alma mater. We want to win. Let me go find some players. And when I started to recruit some good players, he was like, you know what? I want to hire you. Come on. And then I got hired on, and then I fell in love with it. I realized that I still wanted to be a part of that locker room environment. I realized I was still competitive. I wasn't finished, kind of. I had just kind of learned how to have success in basketball towards the end. Like, I really learned the game, and I wasn't done. I wasn't done being competitive. I wasn't done being in the locker room. And then also the coach I was with, my mentor, man, he was a Christian. He was a believer. And then I saw him live out his faith through the game of basketball. And I was like, man, the stories are you have to have this crazy you got to be able to compromise your integrity to get things done, right? To recruit, to do all this. And he showed me a different side of that. So I saw the purest form of what it should look like in my eyes. And I was very fortunate, man, very blessed to see that. And then that kind of kept me going. And then eventually, once you get hired doing it, and then then I get married, right? And so now I'm stuck, now I have to, now this is my career. Now I'm like, what am I doing? Sometimes some years I'm like, man, what am I doing, man? Why don't I go just sell insurance or do real estate and chill instead of dealing with some of the stress we deal with? But now I'm here. Now, what else can I do almost,
Right. Have you always been, going back to those early days and to now, has your coaching style always been the same?
I think so. Where as an assistant coach, I was the same. I was pretty intense. And I think that's what some of the head coaches love, the fact that, and this, this goes for a lot of the assistant coaches as well that aspire to be head coaches. I was super intense, but I was loyal, with what the head coaches want. But yeah, I was super intense. And I even had another mentor coach told me, like, John, you're not going to be able to coach like that. You can't, and he tried to tone me down, but it's just nothing I could, it's just the way I am. So this drive, this passion comes out, and as long as I can do it, I guess most coaches, when they jump in, man, they have a level of intensity, and then they kind of calm down as they get older. But so right now, that's where I'm at. I want to win. I think I grew up in Los Angeles, so Magic Johnson was the era that I grew up in. And with Magic Johnson, it's showtime, it's ball movement, it's pass. It's a new era right now. It's the YouTube and Instagram era where it's about your highlights. But back then it was about, I led my team in assists, the areas and the conferences in assists back in my day. It was about Magic Johnson, who can make the best pass, So I come with that spirit. That's kind of like what I remember. That made the most impression on me as far as basketball. The Lakers were winning in the 80s. It's Magic Johnson. It was showtime. It was passing. And so that made the biggest impression on me. And so that's what comes out of me in regards to what I want to see. I want to see fun. I want to see energy. I want to see intensity, toughness, passing, moving the ball. So that's kind of where that comes from.
Coach, I'm curious, and I've seen the documentary, and I've heard you, not just here, also in the documentary and Last Chance U, where you were very, very passionate with the players, and you were believing in athletes, in young men that a lot of people didn't believe in at all. A lot of people had thrown in the towel. They're saying there's nothing to do with that guy. He, like Joe Hampton, he got out of jail. He's coming to try out. People are saying they're turning their back on individuals like that, athletes like that, because they feel like they can't do anything. Like they're early 20s, 19, 20, 21, and they can't help me in any way. But you're still passionate about those young men. I'm curious why you are so passionate about people that a lot of people don't even care about.
Yeah, well, the first is the compassion that Christ had for me. So I'm a believer, and I tell my guys, nobody has to believe what I believe, but I believe the compassion that Christ had for me and wanting to help those kind of lost souls. I see myself when I look at all of these young men. I see me. I see the some of the damaged goods, and realizing that there's a diamond in there, and if somebody didn't take the time, then I wouldn't be where I'm at today. Realizing, knowing deep down inside of me that I have this gift to be used here on this earth, and I didn't know how to. I didn't know how to let it shine, and somebody had to come buff me off, or somebody had to chip away and bring that diamond out. And there's diamonds in all of these young men. And a lot of us just kick it to the curb because that diamond doesn't shine in their hand right away. So they'll grab the diamond that's covered and it doesn't shine. And they're like, you know what? It's not shining. I don't want it. I can't put it on my finger. They already want it buffed out already. Why don't you take it and crack it open and you buff that diamond out and then put it on your finger? But for me, I don't want to put it on my finger. I want that diamond to go and shine on its own. But I remember, and I think what happens in our society, I think with us, and I've shared on many platforms that I'm 47 years old, man. I'm getting ready to be 48. I remember when I first came in, and you remember when you're young and you working with people, I was maybe in my early 20s. So the guys that I was working with, they were like 2-3 years removed. I was so passionate, fired up. I got it. I understood. Why? Because I was 23 years old coaching a 20-year-old, right? But guess what happened? I got older. And so when I got 24, the player I was coaching was still 20. When I got 25, he was still 20. Guess what? I'm 47. That player is still 20 years old that I'm coaching. So I got to remember, I can't, just because I'm maturing and I'm getting older, that doesn't mean I can't, I got to be, I got to tolerate. It means I can't be intolerable. And a lot of times we start to mature and we forget, man, but that immaturity that we got to continue to mentor. Because there's another kid who's 17-year-old kid that walks through the door who doesn't know how to tie his shoe. But we get 47 and we're like, I can't tolerate this. This kid can't tie his shoe. How come you can't tie your shoe? How come nobody taught you how to tie your shoe? You're 17, tie your shoe. But you know what? When I was 20, 23 and coaching the kid, I was like, hey, man, hey, you could be like me. Let's go, man. Tie the shoe. Let's go. I know maybe someone didn't teach you, and I know you're 17, but that's all right. I'm here with you. Thanks, coach. Well, you know what? When I get 60, I still have to remember to help the kid to tie his shoe. And I can't say this generation sucks. This kid doesn't know how to tie his shoe and he's 17. Well, go ahead and help him because there's a diamond in there. You're looking at that. You're looking at the cost, the time that it's going to take you to teach him to tie the shoe rather than the value that's going to come out of that. And I think that's something that we got to take a look at.
I would say so as well. And I just love watching you on the basketball court with the young men. I just love just the passion you have. Not so much the passion, but early on in the podcast, just a little interview, or like 10, 12 minutes in, your faith in Christ, your belief in God, that God will help you share the compassion that he has shown you to other people. I've enjoyed that. My dad's a pastor. I've been in church all my life. So I enjoy men like yourself that are unapologetically themselves, no matter what, no matter who else is around them. And Coach, I'm curious with how the bosses are at these universities. I'm wondering if it was ever portrayed to you, or if your boss was ever wondering, hey, this man's going a little bit too crazy with God and he's preaching or praying with the young men in the locker room. We got to cut that out. Has that ever been a problem with you while you've been a coach at these schools so far?
Well, you know what, man, I think in this being a public institution, as I walked and lived out my faith, it's never been forced or it's never been exaggerated to a point where it offended anybody, my faith. Just as if I was to offend somebody with another lifestyle, that sometimes we get offended because it's overblown. And so I've never done that. And what I do is I just offer a door. So if I see that there's an issue, I never shove it down none of the young men's throat. I never overdo it. But it's like, hey, the door is open. If I see you hurting, then here's what I'm going to offer what helps me. Here's what I'm going to offer that helped me get through. Here's what I'm going to offer you that has helped me be more disciplined, that has allowed me to have more compassion for others. This is what I have to offer. And that's when you turn your eye and you look like when you start to look for true guidance. And then that's when it's like, okay, here's what I have to offer. Okay. So when you walk in my door and I see you down and I see you really searching and you really looking, then that's what I have to offer. And we have this thing. So it's like, if you're going to offer up what you believe, what your philosophy and how you feel, now you open the door. Now I have an opportunity to share how I feel and what I believe. And so I leave that open for even the players. So I think we saw in one of those episodes, there was a scene we were in the vans and I was playing the gospel music. Well, I'll never just throw in gospel music, but guess what? The players say, hey, coach, hey, could you plug in our music? Play these two songs? Okay. All right, fine, sure, plug it in. You know, how many songs you want to play? Oh, coach, play these 3 songs. Perfect, sure. Hey, but you know that's going to cost you. You play your 3 songs, I'm playing my 3 songs, right? So they throw in their 3 songs, they 4-minute songs, and I was saying they cursing and swearing and da-da-da and my B and my whatever. Okay, fine, time for my song. Guess what? Most of those songs they play last 4 or 5 minutes, 3 minutes sometimes. You put in my songs, spontaneous worship, 8 minutes. We going. No, I got 3 songs. Coach, how long is your song? So we get a chance. That's how it's introduced to these young men. And I think just living out the faith, I think it sets an example when they see they truly are watching. They act like they're not watching, but they're really watching to see how am I living out my faith with my children? How am I speaking about my children? Am I really leaving the office when I say I'm going to leave and go home? and spending time with my wife? How do they see me interact with my wife and my family? Do they see my family? So all those things, I think, those are seeds that are being planted. I don't have to yell and scream and shove the Bible down the throat, but it's being planted. In regards to our campus, it's the same way. It's never shoved down. I actually thought when I was asked to do the show, I said, okay, I can't do this show because I can't do it like the other coaches. I can't be that entertaining. And I think what's going to come out, I asked God, I said, Lord, I don't want to be like some of the reality shows that you've seen that they profess their faith at the beginning and then they're doing things. And I'm like, no. And I asked my pastor, I said, I don't want to do this because these cameras get on you and all of a sudden you do some other things. And he mentioned to me, he said, no, you do it because that's not on your heart. That's not who you are. And in most cases, John, the ones who kind of flip and change when the cameras hit, more than likely that's who they are, but you're not that way. And I said, man, it's kind of makes me nervous because, what's in a man's heart, so shall he speak, right? So what's on my heart, or at least what I try to have on my heart is God's word. And so the only thing that can come out when adversity hits, the only thing that can come out when conversations happen is more of the word. Now, yeah, I still got to work on what I put in my mind, especially COVID, man. This COVID got man, I didn't watch so much TV, man, and binged on stuff. It's just, but the pouring of the word of God, if you have the word of God in you, that's what's coming out. And so I said, you know what, that's what's going to come out. And I said, man, am I going to offend my bosses? Am I going to offend the workplace? But I'll tell you what, man, you never doubt. And I really was in a panic. I said, Lord, what did you have me get into? Like, why did you have me do this? Like, dude, I'm about to get fired. I'm doing too much. But God's hand was on it. And it wasn't over offensive because I was dogmatic. But I think God had his hand on the producers because a lot of people didn't see some of the things. Most of those moments when I really spoke out and we really had those moments, I was digging into scripture and shared so much. They chopped it up to where it wasn't as offensive. It was just seed planting. And so I'm grateful that God had his hand in on it, that it was seed planting. And I think that a lot of good was shown out of it, that even if some were a little offended by me sharing my faith, the goal, the actual goal of what should be happened is making sure these young men get an education and move on and have a great experience. So I think that it overshadowed the fact that, hey, how's this guy just going to, share his faith? I think, I was able to live out who I was. And I was just living out who I was. I wasn't like pouring, like, in the name of Jesus, everybody believe what I say or believe the gospel. I was just living out my faith and they followed me and I just lived out my faith. So, I mean, ultimately, man, and my pastor said, if they close the door there because of that, then God will open a door in another space. And, but literally I was shivering in my boots because I said, there's no way. But then God gave me peace and said, it'll be fine. So I'm still, I still got to keep my back against the wall. I'm still staying guarded because there's a lot of people who sent out a lot of messages. They said, Mosley, we praying for you because we know the enemy is coming to attack now. He's coming because he didn't look good. Satan, he's going to be mad at this one. So we just got to be prepared and stay on guard, and we got to stay girded up because we know that ultimately there will be, and, that's what comes with it, right? He never promised that anything would be peachy cream, man. He probably, there's going to be suffering. There's going to be persecution for our faith. So ultimately, that's what we're going to have to stand against.
I forget if it was episode 5 or 6. It was towards the end of the series. You took a trip to the Colby Ranch, and I was laughing because a lot of the players, they had never been in any type of environment like that. In the woods, you could talk about how stuff falling from the trees. One guy dropped a walking stick. I forget exactly what it was. But that experience there, I enjoyed that as much as watching the basketball because you're seeing the team bonding that I think needed to happen at that point in the season for the team to go on a tournament run or win the championship, which ultimately did get canceled. But I like that because that was kind of like a great part or a great stop in the season saying, look, y'all, we got to do something a little bit different. Y'all might not know what's coming next, but this is going to help propel us to be state champions if that game would have been played?
Yeah, like when you get to a moment where, so we were doing well. I mean, we were on this win streak. It's hard. A lot of people don't understand it's hard to kind of keep it going. Like when we're beating people, and what's crazy is the show made it seem like all these games were like, they made it seem like a lot of games were close, and it was like, oh, we're screwing up. I was kind of upset. We kind of like it didn't look like we were executing or playing any defense. I'm like, man, they would film the part when we weren't playing like maybe 5 minutes of the game we sucked, but the other 35 minutes we were just destroying guys. And then you looked at the film at the end of the game, and it was like, wait a minute, it felt different. But they won by 20. Okay, whatever. So we were on this win streak, and things are going okay for the basketball, but you can get in this stagnant point. And we weren't even close to getting to it was kind of towards the end, but the end was too far to be playing that well, if that makes sense. You don't want to peak too early. So I'm like, we're kind of peaking, and the guys are kind of like, okay, this is kind of boring. And then guys are starting to get on each other's nerves. The players are starting to act out. And so I just said, we got to do something. Guys are starting to bicker with each other. And I was like, man, we got to do something. So we took this trip, and I'm thinking either, one thing, one of these two things is going to happen. Either we're going to grow together or we're going to grow apart. Either we're going to go up to the mountains and do something away from basketball where everybody gets together and we're around the campfire and they look at each other and it's like, oh, man, I don't like the way he smells up. He said, I didn't like him on the court. Now I really don't like him. And I thought we would either go like this even more, or we would go up there and we would hear each other's stories and we would see each other's smiles outside of, and we would relax and calm down, and we would have these activities and we would see each other outside. He would say, you know what? I didn't like him, but I like him now, or I like him and I really like him. And so what happened is I think the latter happened. Instead of us growing apart, we grew together. And that's not, I've done that on some occasions, and you can grow apart. You can look at somebody and say, man, I didn't like him, and I'm not doing this activity with him. And see, that's why I really don't like him. And then you grow apart, and then you get back to the team, the basketball stuff, and now it really separates. So it was like a risk. I was like, man, I could just keep going, and we could just keep winning, or I can give us a recharge. We can maybe do something to recharge so that we can kind of start over again and really like each other and really, really excel, and really, accelerate. And so that's what worked. So it was like, it was prayerful, and it was a risk because things could have went south as well. And so, yeah, that was a moment. That was a great moment. And, nothing's rehearsed. It was like maybe a week prior or a couple days prior. I was like, man, we got to do something, man. Let's figure out if we can find a place and all that. And it worked out. So, a lot of the stuff that happened, man, it's kind of organic. There's some things are rehearsed or not rehearsed, but some things are routine. But most of the things, man, it's kind of organic. We just every team's different. Everybody's different. It's like even when you're in ministry, everybody's different. You can't have this set, plan on how you're going to minister or how you're going to reach an individual. Everybody's different. The way I talk to Joe and KJ and Malik is different, to the 15th guy all throughout the roster. Everybody's different, man. So yeah, that was a moment that, it was needed. And it worked out.
You mentioned a word about maybe a few minutes ago. It was the word growth, and I'm curious from your vantage point, from where you stand as the leader of the team, the head coach. That is, what players did you think grew the most during that season?
You know what? I would hope that they all grew. I think when if you can gauge or you can maybe measure the ones who grew the most based on from how far they've come, but there are even some who maybe didn't have much baggage in their life, and they had some growth. They had to grow into a role, and I think everybody maxed out. We got to a max point because they all had a role to fulfill, and they all had to grow into their role, and they all had to grow and accept it. And so I can't say one grew more than the other. There's all 15 guys. And just because the 15th guy may have had two parents at home and, he didn't complain as much. He, yes, coach a little bit more. There was still a level of growth, just as Joe Hampton had to grow, or Deshaun, because he had to accept that role. And he had to learn what his value was, and then he had to capitalize off of that value. And so it's hard to say, but I would say all of them had, and I said it at the end, like, hey, all you guys, we won. And it wasn't the fake, hey, you guys are winners in my book, the fake end of the season when it doesn't go well. You guys are winners in my book. They really won because they won in life. And I think all of them were prepared to move on, and they did move on. Everybody was prepared. Everybody had figured out how to accept the role. And finally, regardless of the outcome, they won. We were going to win. I believe this is the first time that I can say that we were going to win. I usually have doubts. I mean, I don't care how far we go. I usually have doubts. I was like, man, we could win, but if this guy or that guy, if we don't do this or that, we got these deficiencies. There were very minimal deficiencies with this team. And I'm talking about the deficiencies they had. They filled those holes, and they kind of grew out of them. And so I think I just felt like they won, and they got it. They got it. They all figured it out, and they maxed out on what my role is. It was like, you maxed out on what I can teach you, on what we can get you through at this level, at least in my eyes. Of course, there's always room for growth, but based on my expectations, they had all matured, and they had all got to a point where there's a matriculation, or there's a culmination of moving on. Like, man, you got it. There's nothing more that you can kind of get from this learning experience. So I would say they all got there, man, because I don't want to take away from the guy who maybe he didn't play much and we didn't see him on film, because I had to live out burdens with those guys as well. We just didn't see those guys on film. But they had stories like Joe Hampton and like Deshaun. They had to travel. They had some hardships, different than those guys. But I've just seen just as much growth in those guys and everybody else. But yeah, Joe had a great story, and it was highlighted. But yeah, they all had those great stories, but they all grew.
Coach, I'm curious. I'm going to do this very, very quickly before we end up wrapping this up. I got 5 players here. I got 4. I got 4 players here. And I'm curious, when you hear this player's name, what's one thing you'll always remember about that individual player from coaching them that year? We're going to start with KJ Allen.
Explosive beast, man. Explosive beast, but a sweetheart. Yeah, he's a sweetheart, but he's a super explosive beast. He's a sweetheart, but he's a beast.
Deshaun.
Alpha, fiery. But at the same time, he can be, always say he can be a little bit of a jerk, but he's an alpha. He's just, highly intelligent.
Malik.
Fun. Potential. He's fun with so much potential. So much potential.
And then last on this one here, you mentioned him. Everybody, this story is just coming off the screen when you're watching it. Joe Hampton.
He's so unselfish. He appears to be selfish with how he comes off, but he's so unselfish. We didn't get to see, we saw moments when he don't let me get turned up, but his turning up wasn't getting buckets. It was, he started diming passes. You noticed that. Mm-hmm. And they did a good job of showing that. Those guys, the Netflix team, man, that team they're really intentional about some of the messages they throw in there. And they wanted to show Joe getting turned up wasn't just buckets. They could have showed, but they showed him diming, dribbling the ball, no look passes. He's one of the most unselfish players you think is selfish. That's why we were good when your best player is unselfish. And so that's why I didn't get rid of him. You're like, well, how come he doesn't just kick him up? It was unselfish. I just had to fix the response. I had to change the response to adversity. I didn't have to change his game. His game wasn't the problem. It was the response to an official. Oh, that's all I had to fix. Why would I kick that out for that diamond? There's a diamond. Why would I get rid of that diamond when all I have to do is change that little response? And that's what we do in society.
Last but not least, Coach, I want to give you the floor. Do you have any last comments you want to leave to people, either about the Netflix documentary, coaching, your coaching experience, your family dynamic, anything you want to leave the people with here on the podcast, and kind of like a last word that they'll remember from you here on the show?
Man, I just think everything that we saw there, we were trying to be authentic. And I think it's important to, when you talk about family, I think a lot of that, and I know I have my wife, man, we were trying to think, like, I don't know if we really want them in our space. Do we really want them in our home, in our lives? And, you know, we got this big house that we're renting out, and she's like, let's move back to our house. We're in a house we're renting now. We're like, this house is awful. Why are we here? And then with our church, it's like, our church is small. Maybe we should go to a big church. Like, you know what? Let's just be who we are. Let's be authentic. And I think the authenticity and being real and who you are, and not stepping out and trying to be something that you're not. The same thing with our players, the same thing as a coach. I think that resonated with most. But making sure that we, you know, that important thing, the most important thing to me, I think what resonated with a lot is the family. And I think when we saw the families and we saw the sincerity of the family, I think a lot of people really, you know, that showed that, okay, this is not a fake situation. And then I think number two, never giving up on people. I don't care what space you're in from a leadership standpoint. If you're a CEO, if you are in the church, if you are a coach, if you are a teacher, you know, try to find that diamond in people, man. It's not just coaching. It's try to find that diamond in them, and remember being patient. You don't have to do what I do, all right? You don't have to say, well, I want to save someone out of the gutter. But if you say that you want to do that, okay? So if you can be a CEO, and hey, if your thing is to just raise a lot of money and just donate to save people, that's fine. But don't say you want to do what I want to do and not have compassion and not love and not want to lead with love. If you want to do some of the things that we've done is lead with love. And the reason or the way that I can lead with love is because I remember that Christ had that love for me. And so because he had that love for me and that he lives in me, that love that he has for me and that love that lives in me from Christ, it's poured out onto others. So if you want to do this, and I'm not talking about coaching, but save people or save souls or help people out of situations, then you got to have those relationships. You got to live out the burden with these people. You got to know exactly what's going on in their lives. You say, how can you do it, Coach? Is I know exactly what's going on in Joe Hampton's life. And, you know, that quote is floating out. It's just floating all over the place in social media. Rules without relationship equals rebellion. If you don't have that relationship, then you really can't speak into the young men or your employee or employer's lives. You can't, if you don't have that relationship and know what's going on and know what that individual went through that day. You're just looking at the response of the individual. Well, let me find out what they went through that day, why they're reacting a certain way. And now I can understand, and now I can help them through and help them live through these burdens. And then now they'll respect me because I respect what they're going through. And now they say, okay, Coach, you got my ear. What do you need me to do? Yes, Coach. Okay, let's live this out. And then that's where we can kind of see some change. At least that's what I do, man. I don't have all the answers, but that's the choice that I made, is to decide to, hey, I'm gonna dig into these young men's lives and figure out what's going on. Why can't we get them to respond in a positive light? Why can't we get them to study what's going on? Yes, some may have a learning disability and learn those habits. Well, let's sit down and teach you the habits. You got to spend time. You can't expect they're going to walk through the door. A lot of times we say, here, look at what we have to offer. You guys come and get this. See, the kid, he didn't take his opportunity. Look at him. Nah. If you want to help him, you got to go to the gutter and you got to pull them out. And some you got to drag. And you know what? It takes energy to do that.
It does. Coach Mosley, this has been a lot of fun having you on the podcast. Just hearing you talk about things you're passionate about, not just your faith, but coaching and really helping the young men that you're helping. I enjoyed every part of it. Coach, thank you so much for coming on the podcast, man. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
In the moment, during the interview, when Coach Mosley brought out the diamond analogy, I was sitting in awe and amazement and just wishing that every person was able to grasp what he was saying and that I was able to grasp what he was saying as well. That diamond analogy, that's something that we can utilize not just in sports, not just in our daily occupation, but everything that we do, every person we come in contact with, if we use that diamond analogy and put it into practice, my goodness, this world would be a better place. Thank you guys so much for listening and downloading another episode of the Jay Stevens Podcast. As always, you can follow me on Twitter at jstevens07. You can also send all of your emails to jstevenspod@gmail.com. Remember to always subscribe, rate, and review. It's a great way for people that are searching for a new podcast to listen to come across this one. Then remember to always get the word out about the podcast via word of mouth. The things that we enjoy in life, we are almost willing and somewhat wired to tell other people about. So no matter if this was your first episode or if you have been listening since episode number 1, be sure to let people know about the podcast. This has been episode 204 of the Jay Stevens Podcast. I will see you next time.